All right, well, let's roll into our first segment. And so this is basically our 411 where we learned about something. And we're going to be talking about burn wounds. Trivia time. This is an iconic music album cover. Can you name the band? I'm going to give you big brownie points if anyone can figure this out.
Can we get a lifeline?
It's from the 70s.
Oh, wow.
But it's like a huge band from the 70s.
A huge
The Beatles?
band.
That's a good guess.
I thought the Beatles too.
No, it's Pink Floyd.
Ah,
Yeah, Pink Floyd.
I was gonna say Rolling Stones.
As soon as I was pulling up this topic, I was like, oh, I'm going to use that album cover.
My third grade teacher used to always play We Don't Need No Education.
Yeah,
All
The
the
Wall.
time.
Yeah, Pink Floyd. That's
Yeah, and I was like, you're a teacher.
Yeah, but she's probably a cool teacher.
Counterproductive.
Yeah.
Very
So the
counterproductive.
reason we're talking about burn wounds, I don't know if you saw in the news, there was an article about it where Jay Leno actually received burn injuries. Yeah, which is pretty crazy.
That's wild.
Jay Leno, I mean, I loved him. He was a comedian. He was on The Tonight Show like when I was growing up, and I was really sad to hear about it. He actually was burned while he was working on. He's like a huge car collector.
Yeah, he's a car guy.
He's got like millions and millions of dollars of cars. So he works on him. He was underneath the car, and I guess there was a gas leak, and it ignited. So he got burns to his face, chest, and hands. Mm-hmm. And apparently they're fairly significant. So of course, I want to look into this and see what happened. And fortunately, they're not life-threatening burns. You know how I know that? Because when I looked at the story, he went to a hospital, and then they sent him to a private burn care place. It's like the Grossman Burn Center, which I found very weird because, I did 7 years of burn surgery, when I was in my training. And, burn surgery is usually done in, the highest tier of hospital, like a level 1 trauma center, place that has a burn unit. And I just found it really odd. So I looked this place up. And, of course, in California, they have, these bougie, burn clinics, where it's, they're making it, almost like a concierge type burn.
Salon
it's
spa.
crazy. I had no idea anything like this existed. I learned something. But the good news is because he went there, this is not a life, threatening thing.
Yeah, because he wasn't hospitalized for a long period of time.
This is it's kind of like a hospital, but it's you wouldn't go to this place if you were dying of your burns, because we're going to talk about burns and historically they're one of the most highest fatality rates of any injury.
Yeah.
Although that's gotten a lot better, but he's going to be okay. He's had one surgery to kind of clean up the burns, and most of them are second-degree burns. They think he might have a spot or two, a third, but they're waiting to see, which makes total sense. Everything they said, checks out.
Yeah.
So he's going to be okay, and probably I doubt that he's going to be disfigured or anything. Probably for a period of time he's going to look unusual.
He's probably going to grow a beard if he can.
It's going to be singed off. I mean, he might have that hair. He's got hair like mine where it kind of goes up. He might have singed it off. But I just want to talk a little bit about burn injuries because they are kind of a black box in medicine. And as a surgeon who did a lot of burn care and burn surgery, I've learned that even doctors have a little bit of issue dealing with burns because I'll get referrals for burns, which I look at. I'm like, oh, this is really simple, and the doctors are not really sure what to do, or they can't really identify it. So I'm going to kind of go through this. And as I said, it was historically a very fatal problem. And I have one question for you guys today. It's one written question. I may have more questions. So the major cause of burn deaths. You got 4 choices, and Sarah, I'm going to make you go first. I think I made Travis go first last time. What's the major cause of burn deaths historically? Blood loss, injury, organ injury, so your heart gets burned up, sepsis, which is infection, or pulmonary failure. See, Travis?
Yeah, I say C.
You guys are smart. Yeah, it is. So historically, when people got burned, they died of sepsis, which is a overwhelming infection. And the reason for that is the skin is a enormous barrier to bacteria.
Yeah,
we have bacteria all over us. Mm-hmm. We're always in contact with bacteria, but we're not really getting sick because, 1, we have an immune system, but 2, our skin blocks that. So when a burn injury occurs, what happens is the skin is violated. It's like the walls are broken down, right? And the bacteria are coming in like the Vikings to get you or whatever. And also too, what happens is when the skin gets injured, then that's almost like fuel for bacteria. They can feed on that dead tissue. And so historically, people would die of infection. Now that's changed a lot as technology got better and we learned about things like antiseptics and topical medicines that would get put on. The infection rate for burns burns dropped.
Yeah.
But one of the ways that in the past that people would judge like how bad a burn was, it was called the box. It's BAUX, box score. And it basically took the age of the patient and the percent of their body that was burned, and that would equal their mortality rate. So you're 33 years old. If you had a 20% burn, then in the older days, you'd have a 53% mortality rate. Now,
yikes.
It shows you how dangerous burns are, because think about somebody that's like 70 years old and they get a 30% burn. Well, then that mortality rate's 100. Now, what ended up happening is as we got smarter, that number started to be way too pessimistic. So nowadays they say that like if the score is 140, it's unsurvivable. So that means you at 30 years old could potentially get 100% burn and survive. Right. Which would be hard. I mean, but it conceivably could happen. Yeah. I mean, 100% burn is pretty bad.
Yeah, that would be pretty uncomfortable.
So yeah, you're in trouble if you get 100% burn. So one of the ways that we judge burns is like how much you're burned, right? Yeah. And so there's actually a really cool way that was developed to determine how much of the body was burned, and it's called the rule of nines, and there it is. And so your torso is 18%, so that's divisible by 9. So it's 18 on the front, 18 on the back. Each arm is 9, so 4.5 front, back. And then the legs are 9 in the front, 9 in the back, and then your head is 9. So they're all divisible by 9, and that's how you kind of remember. And so you can look at somebody that's burned and say, okay, well, half their torso in the front's burned, so that's 9%, and then their whole arm is burned, that's another 9%. So they have an 18% burn. Because otherwise, it's like, how do you know what percentage of the body's burned? So the rule of nines is what us as burn surgeons or even ER doctors potentially, if they were sharp, could determine how big of a burn that you have, because it's important in how you treat it.
I like how it has 1% in the groin.
Yeah, it's right. So it's 11 sections that are 9%, and so that's 99%, and then the groin is 1%.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's how you determine the total body surface area. Also, when you're thinking about burns, you want to know the severity, right? Because, I mean, technically a sunburn is a type of burn. And you guys have probably have you heard of degrees of burn?
Well, yeah.
First degree,
third degree burn, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I know it's a dumb question to ask, but since I've been doing this so long, I sometimes forget, okay, do people really know what degree of burn is? So the degree of burn is still used. I would say most burn surgeons don't use that, but a lot of doctors do. So like first degree burn would be like a sunburn. So it's like your skin is red.
Peeling.
It maybe like feels irritated, but maybe not overly painful. So that'd be first degree. Second degree is defined as when the skin actually blisters. And so I've actually had, when I was a kid, we were dumb and we didn't know things about sunscreen, and we'd go out in the sun all day, and I actually had sunburn so bad that I blistered.
I've had that before too.
So that's actually a second degree burn. At the point that your skin blisters, it's considered second degree because it's a higher level of injury. Also, second degree burns tend to be pretty painful, because the nerves are just really kind of irritated. And then third degree burns are the worst. That's when the whole skin layer is killed. And the way that you can tell a third degree burn, like the simplest way, is there's no sensation. Like if you have a second degree burn and I touch it, you're gonna be like, that really hurts. If you have a third degree burn and I touch it, then you're not going to feel anything because the nerves are completely burned out. But most surgeons use a different type of measuring device, which is partial or thickness. So basically all that does is partial thickness is first and second degree, and full thickness is third degree. It's just a little bit simpler because to me it's like I don't even really care about a first degree burn. It's nothing to worry about. I just care about, okay, is it partially skin burned or fully burned?
Right.
So as I said, burn evaluation can be difficult, because a lot of times what happens when people get burned is like the skin will be all different colors, and there might be blistering, and you don't know what's underneath it. And so that's why burns, I think, really need to be seen by, somebody who really knows what they're doing. And also, too, you have to really assess the burn to know if it's one that's going to potentially be fatal, because there's not a whole lot of wiggle room between a burn, which is something someone will completely, recover from, and one that can make you really sick. Yeah. And that brings up questions of like what should go to a burn unit, because like say you get burned and you go to the hospital, like if it's minor, they may just treat you right there. But if it's really bad, they're going to send you to a burn unit where somebody I don't do it anymore, but like where I was,
Yeah.
like working as a burn surgeon.
I feel like most people could probably relate to like getting burned like while cooking or something like that, because I burned myself when I was cooking like last week, and it's just now.
Did it blister?
Yeah, it blistered,
Okay.
and now it's like finally.
So you had what's called a second degree burn.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately, it's really small. Another
Yeah.
way, also kind of going back to measuring, like, because if say you get a burn, you're like, okay, what percentage of my body is this? Your palm is 1%.
Okay.
So like, you know, if you burn like your whole palm, that's a 1% burn. So like if you burned your arm, you could be like, okay, that's 1%. I have a 2% burn.
So if you burn over 1%, you should probably go to the doctor, or.
Yeah, I would definitely go get checked out.
So like people are making fires a lot right now
Right,
because it's
yeah.
hot. I mean, cold outside.
So I'm going to kind of talk about that, because like the right answer and what I'm going to tell anybody is, if you're burned, you really should see your doctor.
Yeah.
Okay, but in reality, like, you didn't go to the doctor, did you? Because you looked at this and you're like, oh, it's so minor, like it's going to heal.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like I've burned myself way worse than this too.
Yeah,
and haven't gone to the doctor.
I mean, at the point that you blister, that technically is a second degree
Yeah.
burn. Where you should be concerned is if you get like a small burn and like the outside's painful but the inside doesn't hurt. I mean, that could be worrisome, because that center part could be a full thickness burn.
Right.
And when you get a full thickness burn, it's much less likely to heal. So I was going to talk just really briefly about how we treat burns. So for minor burns, so like your burn, what should you have done? Now, I'll ask you, what did you do when you burned yourself?
As soon as I did it, I put my hand under cold water.
Okay, so that's good. So that's the first thing you want to do, is you want to stop the burn. Meaning, if your skin got superheated, you want to cool it off. Like if you got burned by a chemical, because there are such things like chemical burns.
Right.
You want to stop the burn by irrigating it with water. So
Yes.
like say you got like hot grease on you, or maybe like if you have a garden and you have like ammonia lye or something like that, and you get on your skin, that's a burn. You want to stop the burn. So
Yeah.
you did the right thing. So what did you do next? Anything?
Not really. I think I
Okay.
might have put like antibiotic ointment on it.
Okay,
once.
so that would probably be my third step. What I would do in between stopping the burn is clean it with soap and water.
Okay,
Now,
yeah.
you probably were doing that because you were putting it
Cooking.
underwater.
and I was cooking. So
Yeah, you're cooking. So, if you get a minor burn, you want to, one, stop the burn. Two, you want to clean it really good with soap and water. And that's where some people like get a little scared, because if you get a blister, you always hear don't unroof a blister. In reality, you do want to unroof that, because that blister will get fluid in skin, which bacteria can use to, cause an infection. So you do want to clean that off. Now, of course, if you have a lot of blistering, you just need to go to the doctor. But if it's
honestly, I found that whenever I burn myself when I'm cooking, if I put my hand or whatever I got, usually my hand, under water, like really cold water, it doesn't blister as bad. Like whenever I'm just
you're stopping the burn.
Like whenever I'm like, ow, that hurt, and then I ignore it.
Well, it's like
But
when you
if I
touch
go
something
immediately-
hot, like your skin suddenly soars to this high
Yeah.
temperature. And if you allow that temperature to remain, it's going to cause a worse injury.
Yeah.
You put it under cool water and you bring your skin temperature down, that is helping
it
you.
never blisters
You're stopping
as
the
bad.
burn. That's right.
Yeah.
Nice, Sarah's smart. So stop the burn, soap and water, and then you did the next thing, which is wound care.
Yeah.
And antibiotic ointment's the right thing to do. So that's for minor burns. But for bigger burns, there are some extra steps. So say someone, back in the day when I was working at the Level 1 Trauma Center, came with a bad burn. First thing we do is assess it, and then I'm about to say something smart here, so get your notepads out. So you want to think about how much fluid that you're going to give a patient that's burned, because they do have big fluid losses. They start to third space fluid, they lose fluid out of the burn area. So there's a way that you can determine that, and it's called the Parkland Formula. Do you know where Parkland comes from?
No.
Travis, Parkland, have you ever heard of it?
Sounds like a hospital.
Is it like the hospital?
It's the hospital,
Yeah.
Parkland Hospital, like literally 5 or 10 miles from here, the Parkland Formula. So basically the Parkland Formula is a way to determine how much fluid you give a burn victim. And it's the 4 times the percent burn times the total body surface area. So I'm going to use myself. So I weigh roughly 70 kilos. If I had a 50% burn, so you do 50 times 70 and then times 4, and I already did the math, that's 14,000, okay? So that means you want to give 14,000 milliliters of fluid over 24 hours. But you give half of that, so 7,000 in the first 8 hours, and you give the other half over the next 16 hours. And the reason that's important is one of the major causes of death in patients who are severely burned, before they die from infection, they die from cardiovascular collapse because they just run out of blood volume. It's not that they're bleeding out, it's all the volume, like the watery part of the blood comes out of it, and then there's just not enough volume to like circulate things, and they just die really quickly.
I can see
so
that.
one of the first things you have to do is you have to resuscitate them, and that's where the Parkland Formula comes in. And then after that, you want to make sure that they have pulmonary support. People who are bad or who are burned really badly go into it's called systemic inflammatory response syndrome. Basically what happens is their organs start to shut down and the lungs start to go first. So a lot of times these patients have to be put on a ventilator. So if a patient came in and was really burned, we would usually put them on a ventilator, even if they were talking and breathing okay at the time, because eventually they are going to collapse from
Was it
pulmonary.
like sudden, or is it more like over time?
It's not sudden like this, but it happens pretty quickly in the time frame after a burn.
Yeah.
So within a few hours. So when someone comes in,
that's
you
pretty
definitely.
sudden.
And what's really sad, I'll tell you like something that's really really sad that I've had happen to me a few times is, I had patients come in and they were really badly burned, and I knew that they were unsurvivable burns. That's happened to me many times. When you work in a level 1 trauma center, you see the worst of the worst.
Right.
And so we'd have patients that came in, and I knew they weren't going to make it. But they were awake and talking, and we're like, okay, we got to put you on this breathing machine. And basically, when you do that, that's it for them. Because once you put them on a breathing machine, then you have to sedate them, and it's basically like that's the end of their life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really sad. That happened a few times where you just knew that this was probably going to be the end for them.
It's really sad.
Yeah. And then lastly, once for patients who are going to survive, you resuscitate them, you get pulmonary support, and then you want to debride the burn. So anything that's full thickness, so the 3rd degree or full thickness, you want to get that tissue off because it's only going to make the patient sicker.
Yes.
So we take them to surgery, we debride them, and then the last segment when we do our skin grafts. So after all the wounds are debrided, after the patient's stabilized, then a few days later we would go back and we would skin graft them to get them completely healed up. So, and that's a whole another topic
Yeah.
that we can talk about. Yeah, we could do a whole segment on skin grafting. Maybe we'll do one.
Okay.
We could do skin grafts. Actually, the skin grafts are pretty interesting. So, but anyway, that's burns. Kind of in a nutshell. You could talk for hours about burn injuries, but that kind of is the basics. Take home, if you get burned, unless it's completely nothing, you should go to your doctor because burns, when they're larger, can make you very sick, and people die from burns. So just be careful.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right.
Did you talk about already how we do a skin graft?
I haven't. We just glossed over it, but yeah, we should do a segment about it.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll do one, maybe next week.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you like that segment, please leave us a comment. Leave us your questions about burns. Let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you.